Now, one thing to remember when you are asking freelance designers for app icons is that never just ask for one icon. Always ask for at least five or six and have some slight variations to those icons. So, for example, the one in the left hand corner, you can see these are on a similar theme but slightly different. And the reason why you need this is because you will need to split test your app icon. Now, what does that mean? That means that you are essentially experimenting to find out which app icon performs the best, namely which ones produce the most downloads, which ones are most people drawn to. So that means that ideally you want 50% of your visitors to see variation A, and you want 50% of them to see variation B, and then you look at the two groups and compare which ones had higher conversions, namely which app icon produced the most downloads. So then, after you've done that, you will find that one out of these five or six icons tends to perform the best, and then you go back to your designer and ask them to make micro variations on that app icon and then go back and test again and again and again. And the idea is that by the end of all this testing, you will end up with the perfect app icon, or as perfect as can be, that produces the most downloads. Now, a lot of marketing, no matter if it's internet marketing or social media marketing or app marketing, it's all about experimentation. And you will have some hypotheses as to what may or may not work, but at the end of the day, all that matters is trying it out on actual users and see which ones produce more revenue or more conversions. So to do A/B split testing, it's actually relatively straightforward on the Google Play Store. All you have to do is upload several app icons, and Google will automatically display a random icon to new users who are viewing the app download page. And based on the conversion rates, i.e. whether if that particular icon led to a download, they will reveal to you the data that shows which icon performs best. And funnily enough, in my experience, it's usually not the one that you think looks nicest. So this kind of experimentation is really, really good for pointing out those unintuitive gains. For example, did you ever notice that most of the top strategy games on the app stores all have the same app icon? And it's basically the main character with their mouth open, looking like they're shouting something and looking far into the distance. And I mean, there is a little bit of psychology behind it, because there's nothing that draws a human in more than another human face or human-esque face. And then having the human face looking far into the distance, you're wondering, oh, what are they looking at? And then having the so-called raw face or action face means that, there's a lot of emotion going on in that image. Now, some of this is cause and effect, namely the app icons for Clash of Clans and Game of War both have this kind of app icon, so there's a lot of copycats. But at the same time, I can bet you that these app icons have been split tested to death, and they have found through data that this is what draws people in those fraction of a second while you're scrolling through the app store. So my point is not necessarily to find your main character, open their mouth and make your app icon just an action mouth. My point is that the data can sometimes be really revealing and give you unintuitive conclusions. But seriously though, check out the top grossing strategy games and check out how all the icons are essentially the same. So for Google Play, implementing split testing is very easy, but for the iOS App Store, it's not so easy. Despite promising us the same feature for years and years now, iOS app developers still don't have access to this experimentation feature or split testing feature. And instead, what you have to do is manually update your app with a new app icon and compare, say, month to month, how your app is performing, presumably based on the change in the app icon or the change in your screenshot. Now, there's two problems with that. One is that if you've done any sort of science, you'll know that that is not a valid comparison. It has to be side by side because, this month you might have been featured in Product Hunt, whereas, last month nobody heard about you. So there's a lot of confounding factors, basically. On top of that, there's a website called App Review Times, which tracks on average how long it takes for an app update to go through. So at the moment, it looks like it takes about 4 days for your iOS app update to actually be reviewed and then released, because on the iOS App Store it's done by humans and it can be a little bit, it's sped up in the last year compared to before. Previously, I think 2 years ago, we were waiting something like 2 weeks to 3 weeks for every update to actually get reviewed and pushed through. But still, 4 days is a long time, and that means you can only really do 2 experiments a month, for example. So it's not really ideal. An alternative to that is using a service like StoreMaven. And essentially the idea here is that you send your traffic, i.e. people who potentially download your app, towards a page that looks identical to the App Store download page. And based on their conversions, i.e. whether if they hit the download button or not, you can compare how different icons perform, how your app screenshots perform, how your description perform. So essentially allowing you to split test your app download page and bypassing the App Store itself. Now, the downside to that is that it's an extra click for your user to potentially give up on downloading. But on the upside, you do get a lot of useful data that will improve your download rate in the future. And they have a 30-day free trial, so check it out if app listing optimization is something you want to get serious about.